I think it could start anywhere, you know? It could start with the recording, with the field recording, but it could also start with a synthesizer sound and morphing that and just exploring where that goes. You could say the source is different, but I don't really place judgment between the kind of like, oh, the source coming from the outside world or the source coming from like a synthesizer, both analog or digital, whatever. To me, it's all kind of frequencies. And so I'm just kind of exploring that, you know? Like, look at that coffee machine, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like everything, like you could loop that and turn that into like an incredibly like powerful drone scape that I think could like obliterate your mind in some way, like make you completely just. To me, those are kind of like magic moments, and those are out of my control. It's the sound that produces that itself. And that's why I don't know how I came up with this, but I just thought about like sound as being an entity. And so I don't like the notion of like taking sound and thinking that I can compose something with it. It's more, or use it to compose something. It's more like I'm working with it and just kind of reacting to how things play out in a sonic way. I mean, it's a very kind of strange approach that I kind of just taught myself. It's not really anything that somebody taught me. And maybe it's more of a kind of musical revolt, I think, because I feel like I've been brainwashed into anticipating or expecting a certain kind of music. And we're all exposed to that music all the time. So, you know, it's a pushback against that kind of system of taking sound and music and organizing it in a way that is commercial. And what I'm trying to say is that the commercial aspect of music and our emotional response to music are so interconnected that people will utilize that in order to profit and make huge amounts of money from that emotional reaction. And I'm not down with that.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wanting to explore sound for what it is. And I think there's a huge, vast universe of sound that is completely unexplored.
Another episode of Liquid Vibes. I'm doing an interview with Emilio Portal. Is that?
Yeah, en français.
En français?
Emilio Portal.
Emilio. We have known each other since Cambridge College days in, I guess, the 2000s, early 2000s, taking percussion together. I've seen him, make music. He's been in the studio with Mike Frat Pietro. There was a studio session you came into at a house. And I had made the room into like a studio room. I was keeping that house for like a month. Anyways.
That's crazy. This is like blur to me. Like I hardly remember that.
Yeah, I think you came in for like 3 days, or it was like 3 songs.
It was something about a canoe, I think. That's what I remember. It was that the word canoe was part of
Okay, that was another one.
Yeah.
I wanted you to do cajon with that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That was at your place, and we were just like doing an impromptu little recording jam.
Yeah. Well, that's still in the works.
20 years later.
Speaking of which, yeah. So like myself, like when I create, like I could create stuff in, almost every day, which I like.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like a sketch of a hand or a sketch of like something. It's not a complete piece of music, but it's a beautiful expression in itself.
I like that notion of sketch. I think that's really important because, I don't know, to me it's like sketch is something really almost like pure about it. It just comes out. You don't know like where it comes from, things like that, I like to just like honor that. And that's kind of a big part of my process is kind of just working with that notion. Maybe not, I never think about sketch, but I think that that's probably a good word. Yeah, you think about like It's amazing, like Italian Renaissance artists, their drawings. But I think even further back, it's like you go to cave paintings and stuff like that. There's no preparation drawings to get towards that cave painting. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like the cave painting is the sketch, is the final piece. It's all of it, all in one shot.
Right.
You know, so it's like there's
Interesting.
something to be said about just like, I don't know, setting a kind of intention and clearing that way just for musical creation, let's say, and then just record it and capture it, and that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Cave painting, I mean, that's kind of a wild thing to think about.
I take it back to the flutes, those instruments where it was playing by the fire with bones, and it
Yeah,
was
that's amazing.
yeah. And to me, it was like kids were poking bones with poking sticks, fire sticks, and made holes in them, and they found out, oh, it makes a little sound.
It's crazy, right?
So yeah, flutes and drums are the first instruments that they say that were made like in the world, because in a sense I believe so, because it's in all cultures. It predates all the cultures,
yeah.
and it carried on, to be in.
It could be simple as hitting two rocks together, right? It's like, that's amazing.
Yeah. So
Yeah, percussion and wind instruments. I think probably voice, obviously, in your body was first, but
that was
but the music.
which comes
Yeah.
down to So the reason I wanted to talk to you is because of the way you make sound, and you explore, I would say, noise and sound, and you enjoy that process. I believe so, because you keep doing it. Unless you really hate it and you're like, why am I still doing this? What do you do to get into that? Like what are you looking for? What's your process on the day?
I think it could start anywhere, you know? It could start with the recording, with the field recording, but it could also start with a synthesizer stuff. And more from that.
Before the commercialism, all cultures had music.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it was the soul expressing through the instruments what they were feeling at the time. And every day was probably a new song, a new feeling, a new creation.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what should be back in cultures. And I can actually see like how people appreciate music right now. It's really, really good. I compose the same way, where I start with any sound, and I let it tell me what it is. And I'm here to let it through as egoless as possible, so that it shows me what it is. And I've discovered so many things that I've never discovered before, in a sense of emotions I've never known and things I've never thought I could feel. I was going to be an astrophysicist growing up, but I discovered that there's more in me and what can come through me than actually I could see in the universe.
Wow.
And that's more tangible in that sense. I could actually experience it.
Yeah.
And hold it in that sense. So that's why I went into the journey of music, because of how infinite and vast the discoveries I was allowing, the adventure. Every day is a new adventure in that sense.
Yeah.
So, but I hear you, where it's like when I'm writing music for film, it's not as natural or as spontaneous and new as if it was just a thing that I'm allowing to come out. Or like, how do I feel today?
What's funny is like I've done some film scoring too, and it's like a lot of times it's like I try to bring that kind of vulnerable kind of approach into that as well. So like I'll maybe watch the film one time through and kind of think, or I don't know, feel whatever into what might be, I don't know, feel right for that context,
Yep.
And then kind of just record a performance. And a lot of times it's like one-off thing, and that's what it is. And then it's about kind of, finessing the spectrum of it, levels, things like that, more technical sides of things. But when it comes to actually like creation, I'm almost not in the frame of mind to sit down and map out a structure. I kind of try to avoid that completely and just go right into it. And that, I think, is really scary for a lot of people, and including myself. It's like you just have to kind of go right into it without even knowing what's going to happen. Like some live shows that I've done, I mean, all of them that I've done recently have been completely like that. I had no
Like no rehearsal,
well, I'm constantly refining what I do.
Right.
But it's new every day, every time. So when I come to the performance, there's not really too many surprises about it. But I know the technical side of it, but I don't know musically, sonically, what's even going to happen. So I just show up, and I maybe have some sounds that are linked up, but I have no notion of how long they're going to play, of what's coming first, what's coming last, nothing. And I just flow with the whole thing and just see where it goes. And it could totally flop. Sometimes it's like I lose complete control of like entire drum sections. Everything just disappears and it doesn't work for some technical glitch. And I have to just not be flustered by that and move through it and adapt and move in a different way.
Yeah.
It's a wild thing, you know? It's like, yeah, it's like taking a walk down the street, right? You never know what's going to happen.
Oh, I fell on my face.
Yeah, I'm in the hospital now. Oh, shit. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, there's a guy who actually, the potholes of Sudbury, somebody fell and broke his arm. Was it his leg? I forget.
What?
For a pothole. It was freaking, a musician that teaches music at Laurentian. What's his name? Always wears black. What's his name?
Dan?
Dan, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Freaking Dan Bedard.
Is he, what? He broke his arm?
He broke, I think it was his arm or his leg. I forget.
How long ago was that?
It was a couple of years back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He walked into the 84 and it was like, hey, what the heck happened? It's a pothole. Sudbury potholes. Yeah.
Yeah, call 311.
It's true, yeah.
Jesus. Oh, man.
What I've seen and studied, the history of music is based on who had the printing press, the kings and queens and the church systems. And they were the ones who were allowing certain music to be printed. As music progressed and their allowances, that's what we think musical progression was, according to what was written.
Yeah.
Now, all cultures have music. It wasn't really that progression of music. As if like, oh, this era was this era was that. I bet you like there's some people writing stuff is like, why can't they play this? Well, because it's not part of the era. But it was being made. Like other people were probably making other music and they're like, it's not mainstream. I hate this mainstream music. Type thing going on.
Well, that's what I was kind of referring to when I was talking about being brainwashed, you know what I mean? I think that kind of indoctrination, musical indoctrination, is very old. Not that old, but it's hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
And it goes hand in hand with colonization and the destruction of all the different indigenous cultures around the world, you know? And music, indigenous music was made illegal in many parts of the world. People were killed because they wanted to conduct their ceremonies and play their musics and all of that. Which
and they're taking away all spirit, all cultural things, and that's how the cajon was actually created as well.
Well, that's true. I mean, that's an Afro-Peruvian invention by African slaves who
were not allowed to play music.
They took away all the instruments or whatever, and
they still play.
They found fish. They found like crates in the shipping yards and stuff like that, and just started playing on them. It's incredible.
Yep. And it's incognito. It's just something that's like, we're just sitting on a box.
Yeah.
So to anybody else, it'd be it's not an instrument.
South America is a massive history of rebellion against the state, against slave ownership, and there's lots of examples of communities that are founded by African folks who were liberated by rebellion and escaping their enslavement. That's quite amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the history, like at Cambridge College, the history of music got to a point in the late 1800s, early 1900s of tone. Was it the 12-tone system, the tone writing, where they took one note of all the 12 notes and they put a certain order, and you only play one at a time, like, and have this whole order, and then they had this other chart coming down, another order, and they made this chart of all the 12 tones. Like, you can't repeat them out of the whole line.
Yeah.
And they did this thing where it's like constant. So there's no really like centralized tone or centralized, with, how can I say, tonic, home bass.
Like, so all the notes had a kind of equal part in the composition.
Yeah, and every musician had his own line of playing. So it's like just random notes, almost random because you can only press one at a time, not repeat it until you've done your whole 12 in that sense. And this music was like kind of an era. The era didn't last long. The music couldn't be. The songs couldn't go longer than 2 minutes. Actually, they were no longer than 2 minutes because there was no edges anymore. There was no there was no definition where it's like you already knew it was always random stuff. So there's the similarity in that sense. And the era didn't last long. It was like an experimental thing more than an actual, like, let's make a part of music.
My perspective is that there's still only 12 tones in the octave. And there's a lot of other tones that are in between each one of those notes that are not, like, we don't really listen to that. We don't hear that, like, especially not on, like, on the radio. My entire life, it doesn't matter what station we listen to, in all of North America, possibly, like, you know, South America, you don't hear those other tones. It's like you just hear the 12 tones.
Yep.
And that is that's very truncated in my perspective. If you have 12 notes in 7 octaves, that's 84 tones. And that's like 7 octaves is like a big range for all the orchestral instruments. And like that's almost like 7, 8 octaves. That's very big. But that's still, what is that, 96 tones. So around 90 tones is all that we're exposed to, but it's still all derived from 12 tones. You know, so that to me, that's a problem. It's a problem because, you know, I think about, let's say, another art form, like art, like painting, like color, okay? There isn't that kind of, you could say, legislated or controlled system when it comes to color. Every artist has a different kind of emotional response to, like, yellow, let's say. But it's also dependent on what kind of pigments they can source, all these kind of things. But there's a fluidity to that. There's a gradation that is almost infinite. Why are we not working in that kind of way in music? You know, like this kind of infinite gradation of sound. I fucking love that.
Yeah, and one is different than the other as well. I find too that words are what we're talking about as well.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we do need structure as well as the unstructured, because we're talking structure. Every word we've been saying is a structured thing, and to understand each other, to get somewhere or to have some sort of, it's not like they're not a part of it. That's the thing too. That's all these spots, all these points are also part of life as well. It's not just the only ones. I agree with that, but they are also a part of them. And they're, like, in a sense, like with me and art, it's more of an enjoyment of the experience. And it could be, you could feel like you're in prison. Well, that's an experience. And if you feel like you're free, but you can't feel you're free if you don't feel what the prison is. In that sense. So you need the prison to know what freedom is.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So it's a relationship of both.
And I think there's a big pushback too, because the entire, like, musical industry, musical instruments, the way we've learned how to play those instruments and all of it are completely intrinsically linked and bound to the 12-tone system, you know?
It's, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I see it like that, like the divide between rhythm and melody.
Yeah.
And melodies, it's dependent on rhythm, you know, because there's no melody without rhythm. Moving through time.
Oh, yeah.
too,
It's a beautiful marriage of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. A very beautiful marriage. There's an experiment I did when I was 16 years old, because I had synthesizers and stuff, and I recorded my voice just going beep. It was like a beep, but like a little sound sample of beep. Put it on the keyboard, beep,
Yeah.
beep, and I looped it. Beep, beep. So you have this beeps, beep.
You played at different octaves and everything?
Yep, the whole thing. So, and as you go up, yeah, he goes, the frequency goes up, the sound
Gets shorter.
gets shorter, right? As I was playing a major chord, there was a rhythm of 4 beeps here, and this one did 5 beeps, and this one did 6 beeps in a major chord.
Right. That's
And every time,
interesting.
yeah, and every time this one got back to number 1, they all got back to number 1. Okay, that's a major chord. Okay, now and it sounded like this: beep 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 beep.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
very,
really cool.
Very interesting. Now, that sped up becomes the major chord. At 4, 5, and 6. Now you could say that this is 2 and that's 3. So 3 over 2 is your number 1 note with the number 5 note.
Yeah.
And number 1 note with 5 note is your first polyrhythm. Okay? Beep 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 beep. The actual quantum rhythm of notes is actually rhythm. It's very fast, but
Yeah,
that's why it sounds.
hurts,
That's
yeah.
why it sounds like that. That's why it's strong with the 1 and the 5, because it's mathematically strong in rhythm with itself.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's why it feels that way as well.
But
Now,
it was organized like that, purposefully.
it was, yeah. They found that, oh, here's the one that fits.
Yeah.
Okay, let's use that one. And actually no. We'll talk because there was flutes made before they even like knew what these rhythms are. It was the pentatonic scale. In a sense, they had tones that were 5 tones that belonged to the major scale.
Yeah.
In that sense. So when I played that, now when I played the minor chord, that middle note is a little bit slower. So what you have is that you have these two that are always together, and this one never really catches up to that rhythm.
It's always in
It's always
between.
falling a bit further back, and you hear that first rhythm, da 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 da, and then it starts to break up, like, and you feel a loss of that perfect rhythm. And in a sense, you have that loss because you know that there's two things together. So this juxtaposed things that are together, and it was together, and it's falling back. It's not quite making up to that rhythm.
I'm not saying it's not brilliant. It's incredibly.
It's incredible, yeah.
It's incredible.
Did they know that when they were like, and they even called it major and minor chord? But the feeling itself, when you hear it, pay attention to that sensation of feelings. To me, when I was taking, theory of music, it was like theory of emotions. They were like, hey, this is an emotion, like, what do we call this? I don't care what it's called, but it's like, I'm identifying the emotional aspect of what that is in that sense. So that when I want to dig into that, okay, I want a knife, not a spoon to cut this thing. You know, I want something that's like...
And even if you're not a musician, I kind of think about this a lot. Like if a lot of people listen to music, like tons of people, I mean, that's why the music industry makes so much money, and the streaming platforms and everything like that. But there's a lot of non-musicians who listen to music, and they don't know music theory and rhythm and history like we're talking about. But they're being taught through kind of osmosis of just being exposed to it that is what music's supposed to sound like, what good music is supposed to sound like. I think music, unfortunately, has become more and more formulaic, and I think there's a kind of feedback loop with streaming, because people, especially in the music production realm, are thinking like, they're looking at the stats and they're like, these songs get more streams than these ones, why is that? And then they'll dissect everything and look at what the formula is behind that song. And a lot of people are starting to do studies about that and say like, well, if you notice, there's no more long intros, there's no more solos, there's no more kind of expressive parts of songs anymore, because those have been all cut out, because those are not the songs that are getting the most hits. So we gotta bring this down to 2.5, 3 minutes max, and that's the hook. It's all about, to me, when even that word, the hook, is kind of, it shows a lot about like this kind of addicted kind of obsession culture that we live in. And it's like, if you don't get that hit from that piece of music, then it's not good. And it's like, I'm not interested in the hook at all. Like, yeah, I when I hear a good hook, okay, yeah, I'm affected by it too, and I know that it's good, you know what I mean? I can feel it. But there's other, let's say, elements or qualities of life that I want to try to access through sound and music. And that is like, namely, like, I think slowing down and being more present with sound is hugely important. That's why I make long pieces. That's why I spend a lot of time with something very repetitive and maybe even mundane. Things that just slowly work on you, rather than like give you this like, take this pill now and feel the effect and it wears off like that. It's like a coffee hit, you know what I mean? Yeah. There's a lot of that kind of up and down, which I'm like not interested in. I think it's totally like unsustainable in a health way, you know, because
in a healthy way.
Yeah,
because people have to let themselves experience other things. That's the other part of the whole thing. Like,
but the media is not letting us do that, you know.
Well, that's the nature of the beast, and the beast is money, and you know, this whole rat race thing. So, but
if there were people that were actually marketing something that's like, there's a massive health industry, right? It's like billions of dollars towards that.
Yeah.
And if those two things came together, like music and health, I don't know. I think about these kind of things, and it's like, I think that it's all about the people in power who have the money and their ideology behind it, and what they spend and who they spend it with, and what kind of marketing kind of packages they create. All of that is like dictating the flow of culture and the direction of culture.
Well,
if people invested in other kinds of marketing and other kinds of ideas,
I know,
you know what I mean?
It's hard because I'm speaking for myself, the person who has all these instruments at home. It's their power when people give it their power. Like, you could go home and do whatever you want in that sense, and to say it's their power, then you're putting the power in that.
Yeah.
When are they ever at home watching me do anything? You know, in that sense. So you could play whatever you want at home. You could do whatever you want. Especially with the world of the internet, like what's available and to find and stuff. It's like the government and these powers that be, in a sense, they're doing what they're doing, but they only have power when you freaking, well, I guess with the money thing, but like for what you're gonna listen to and stuff.
I think
in a certain sense, but also. That's where it's like, well, how about you create something? Like, why wait for somebody to create something for you when you can do it yourself? And that shows how awake the society is, if you're in control of letting somebody else do something for you. So it's not just the government. It's like, it's people. It's people that have to wake up. It's not the government. To me, anyways.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I partially agree, but the other part of me is like, well, you could say I could do whatever I want. I could be completely free if I wanted to.
We're talking music right now.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
But at the same time, you could. The way I see things is like, I think we're all interconnected, and we influence each other more than we like to admit. And I think that there's a continuous kind of ecosystem of ideas, of expression, of all kinds of things that we're constantly like taking in a subconscious way, and we're constantly like digesting those things all the time, and we don't even know that they're influencing us. And I think that kind of deep flow of like, I don't know, subconscious culture of ideas, of colors, of sounds, of all of that, it influences what people create and what people are attracted to as well.
Okay.
So if we're not exposed to different kinds of expression, then we're not going to seek that out.
This is true too.
And so that's my inclination is to kind of, I don't know how to say it, but it's almost like to try to cleanse yourself from that somehow. And of course, I'm still part of it. I'm not saying, oh, I live outside of the system. No fucking way. It's like, I am part of the system too. But what I'm saying is that creating a kind of expression that's like what I'm doing, I think is a reaction to what's going on.
Okay.
And it's influenced totally by the flow of everything too. But I think that it's important to talk about a kind of, voices or expressions that are really not heard or given any kind of airtime, almost anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, I could go into lots of things. Like locally, there's like, local radio shows. Nobody plays my stuff because it's whatever. That's how they feel about it, and that's okay. It's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, that kind of not playing my stuff is also influence for me to continue to like push and go deeper into what I'm doing in that kind of way, because nobody else is going to do it for me. And there's something about that dedication to your own craft and your own artistic practice, that after coming this far, it's like you can't just drop and be like, I'm gonna just make jingles now. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. What's in the future right now? What do you got planned?
Well, I'm gonna release this album called Open It, which is, if it's French.
Open It?
No, Open It.
Open It?
Yeah.
Open It.
Yeah, like blessed water, like sacred
Open
water.
It. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And it's not an allusion to church. It's referring to Bennett Lake. Which
cool.
is in the South End, and that's part of the Laurentian University green space.
Yep.
Which is still threatened. They might sell it. All this craziness.
Yeah. That's been going on for a bit.
I got a grant for that from Northern Arts,
Okay.
Ontario Arts Council, and been working on this thing for months. And right now, I think there's like 27. I call them like performances because it's kind of how it feels for me. It's not a composition because I don't sit down to kind of draft out any kind of thing like we talked about, but it's a sonic kind of performance.
Flowing.
Yeah, and I'm trying to like capture my feeling of being there, of like walking that lane and knowing that place. And
Which you've been quite a few times.
I spent thousands of hours there.
Yeah,
it's kind of
I see the videos. It's so cool. I don't
love
comment
that.
or anything, but I see them and I'm like, I appreciate that. You bring me out with you.
All those little videos lately that I've been doing, which are like, yeah, they're like audio visual kind of just poetic explorations. They're all taken there, and yeah, it's like it's interesting to have those collisions of those two worlds, like these kind of microtonal synthesizer drone kind of things. It totally changes your perception of like even just a small body of water or something like that. That's the last little one I said, like, yeah, I know this is scary. This little clip here of 1 minute is terrifying, but why is it terrifying?
Yeah.
You know, and that's so interesting to me, is like the why. And I think a lot of it has to do with like sound, you know, because if I played like, I don't know, like Polka Dot Door or something on that, you wouldn't get the same idea at all.
No. And that's what I realized too with like making music for film or sound for film. Is that a lot of things can go with the same image. A lot of different sounds, a lot of different songs or and such. But then it's like, well, what exactly is it saying? What is this scene saying? So what is the garnish for this? What else can accompany? Yeah. What's happening here?
There's lots of crazy like horror films that do that, you know, like like The Shining, for example. That's an incredible, like a masterwork, you know, like, but that's got a lot of use of synthesizers within there, and it's like there's a disconnect almost between like the scene and the sonic world. There's two different things kind of going on, but when they collide, they create this like terrifying thing, you know.
And that's what I was talking to the crew I'm working with now. It's like we have to let the scene play itself instead of us trying to make something out of, you know, like the actors can act, but there's a scene that we need to feel. We need to feel like where they're, you know, the car is out in a parking lot. Well, let's feel what that feels like instead of like what the actors are always doing in that sense.
Yeah, and I
Feeling
think there's like a massive like creative collaboration and discussions going on between the whole creative team and stuff like that, and it's like, I think that's super important, that kind of collaboration to discover new things and new ways and new approaches. It's like, you can't do it all alone. I mean, it's funny I say that because I do a lot of music alone, but I also do lots of collaboration, you know. I work with my partner, with Elise, and we've done a lot of films together. Like, so that's kind of cool. That's pretty wild.
So I'm here with Emilio Portal. We're at the Nowhere Space, Nowhere Public House. They open up their place for a lot of people to play. They have open mics here. They accommodate me to do these interviews, which is pretty cool. It's nice to catch up with Emilio. You can catch him on, if you want to talk to him. Do you want people to talk to you, or just
Sure. Yeah, whatever.
on Instagram?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, he posts a lot of stuff.
Shoot me a DM.
A DM. Yeah, man. At Emilio, I think it's Emilio.
It's like, I changed it, but it's just Emilio, and there's 3 underscores Portal.
Okay, there you go.